Hello, welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. I'm on summer break, so I'm in my backyard. Different background, you guys will enjoy that. So I found out just a couple days ago about some changes that the FAA is making to knowledge tests for the computer knowledge test. Now, this is really interesting to me. I will link to a few sources for this information. It seems to have started with the FAA publishing some information in February 2026, basically saying that the FAA is working with the test provider, PSI, that's who administers FAA knowledge tests in the United States, saying that they are going to begin looking at getting rid of the paper knowledge test supplement books. Then there was another notice that came out in April 2026 saying that the FAA is going to begin this process starting with the instrument rating exam, which if you guys have watched my content, you know I talk a lot about instrument test hints and tips and going even over in depth with the figures in the FAA knowledge test supplement book because I teach instrument ground school where I work at LeTourneau University. And so that notice said that this was going to start approximately like October 2026. So now we all know that sometimes things run a little behind schedule. I don't know where the FAA is really at with that. But a lot of my other content you guys will find is all about the ATP and the aircraft dispatcher knowledge tests, where I go over specific figures from that computer test supplement book for those exams. Now, so what, my feelings about this, and I'll link to some other information that I've found, just like an article that came out yesterday. It's June 2026. Sounds promising, to be honest, because yes, it's true that some people go out there and just memorize the picture and memorize the answer that goes with it. There are some very good study methods out there that exist today where people just tell you to memorize this, that, and the other. Now, I want to emphasize, you need to read the figures when you're taking a test. That's what the FAA is looking at. So that would be important to still, I still think that it's valuable to look at the FAA's figures. Hopefully they will continue to somehow make available like the supplementary material to you digitally when you're taking these exams. Because like, for example, instrument, I need a climb descent table. And that is part of some of the questions I need to look at when I'm looking at instrument departure required climb gradients. So I have to be able to look at this information. So hopefully the FAA continues to provide that. But like for aircraft dispatcher and ATP exams, we have to be, again, able to look at the chart. And my rules are read the notes, read everything about that chart. Can I look at the specific chart in advance? No, maybe not anymore. Now, I will say the ATP and dispatcher exams are not currently on the list that the FAA is changing over, but I feel like something's coming with that. They don't want people memorizing the charts, but you can still review material from the old charts. You can review like all my old videos and see how to read this information, because what is the FAA really testing you on? Is it really like calculating 737 burns from random charts for fuel burns? No, they want to know if you can read notes, read the question, think, and interpret the data. That is testing your ability as an airman. And in my opinion, that's a good thing. We don't really need people just memorizing test questions and answers. We do need people being able to read them. And same for instrument. If you can read the FAA format for an instrument approach, then you can read different approaches and not just like one approach that you memorized in order to pass the test. So I think it's a good thing. It will be interesting to see the FAA's schedule for rolling this out. I do know, like I said, the instrument rating test looks like it's scheduled to start this in October, and it remains to be seen if the appendix material, I think that really needs to be still available. I don't know if the FAA is going to continue to make it out on the internet as a PDF. I will keep following this and keep people informed. But like the ATP and aircraft dispatcher test, they have questions about duty time requirements, those are in tables that are already embedded in that knowledge test supplement. So I feel like they need to continue giving that information to people during the test if they're going to ask that information, because you cannot be expected to memorize whole tables of flight duty periods. And again, if you want to watch my video about that, I totally unpack that in several videos that I will link to. But this is just a good example of knowing how to use your resources, knowing how to read and understand the question, and knowing how to read the figures and the notes, and spending time, even if it's not that exact figure, spending time looking at example figures. So I would love to know what you guys think in the comments, because this is really new. That's why I'm recording in my backyard, because I just found out about this and I'm off for break. But tell me what you think. Let me know in the comments. Send this on to somebody else who you think will find this helpful or interesting. And if it causes you to like totally panic, then try to do your knowledge test before the FAA starts rolling out random changes to the tests. Have a great day from Aviation 101 with Laura.